So basically, as we know, unity is so important. And the best way to really understand how to do this is to know what we're really made of. So I'm going to bring some attention here to the divine blueprint and to just the notion of the balance between the masculine and feminine. And for this whole presentation, you just take what resonates and leave the rest, because it's going to get pretty interesting here. So we want to really empower what the divine blueprint is, without getting too, into concepts that'll make people think that this is about trying to explain what God is. But really the Holy Trinity is the Holy Mother, the Holy Father, and the Holy Son, or the Christos energy, and they're all united as one Godhead. And this is the thing with union. Union, the masculine and feminine together, naturally birth what I call the magical child, which is a regenerative force that keeps everything going. It's that zero-point energy, and it's really what we're stepping into, and that's why union has been so attacked. And this divide and conquer mentality is to prevent us from being able to get in touch with this energy, which comes straight from source, and it's really what the alchemy is about. So starting with the Trinity, the Mother, Father, and Son, a little bit about this. The Trinity originate from the pure positive God worlds in the highest realms of existence. The central universe is the main one of 7. So we're not just one universe here, there's actually 7, with one main central universe that holds no duality whatsoever, but as we get into the lower worlds of creation, the pure positive nature of the father light splits into the male and into the female. And so with this central universe, they have children to run other universes, which would be the other 7, and their offspring are called creator sons and infinite mother spirits. And they're given an area where they can go out and create another level of the universe, and their role is to act as oversouls. And these pair then create the soul energy via the father light and the demiurge that they become. So when we say father light, we don't want to get too stuck on gender, but it's basically just kind of like we see in nature, positive, negative, just these forces, right, left brain. They have a particular gender, but it's not based on masculine, feminine, as in physical body, because we all, no matter what sex we are, have these energies. And so that's really what the role is to birth these other creator forces for the universe. So we're going to get to this universe. The first emanation, the first thought, is the 510 aeon. If people have heard of aeons, they're currents of energy. And it's basically the image of the invincible spirit that's becoming manifest, which is that single point. Like Ein Sof, War, if people have studied the Kabbalah at all. And then Ek, Kasha, the void, the primal sound, and the primal light. And then there's the time matrix, which is made up of 15 dimensions. The energy matrix is where the Trinity first exists. And then there's the logos and the autogens, which is the Son, as we talked about, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and it's the glue that keeps it together. And then the magical child. As it starts to manifest, it's the Anthropos, the first man, Adam Kadmon, which is basically the blueprint. So that's kind of the picture of just the way creation happens. So subsequent acts of creation took place from the union of these energies in different combinations with each other. The light of the Father, the eternal Son and original Creator, and the infinite Mother Spirit. So different combinations produce different soul energies and founder races that become what manifests humans, what manifests star systems, and just everything just kind of emerging out of this place. And where the human was seated is the cradle of Lyra. The cradle of Lyra is the seating point of life in our time matrix from the 3 manifest founder races that all emerge from that trinity that's birthing all these different combinations of each other. The founder races are known as the Elohim, the Elohai Elohim, the Seraphi, and the Brahma. And I can get into detail about what that all represents, but that would be just a really, really long presentation. Each slide could probably be a presentation on its own. And I'm missing bits and pieces here because we'd be here for days. So this is just a general overview to make a very specific point about where we're at right now in our world. So there's a pair for this particular universe. And so in the beginning of this universe, the father and mother were in balance. They created a child who is considered the Christ autogens. And this is the blueprint we're made of. When we're in union, we're constantly birthing this Christ consciousness and this energy. But a disturbance happened between them when they discovered self-will. So, of course, we love free will. We wouldn't want to exchange that for anything. But there's also something that can become of that which can get in the way at times. So, in that free will, as things were splitting, and it wasn't so much about connecting to that central universe and bringing that light into birth souls, there was a choice. And this isn't about blame, like the father energy did it. I'm sure in other universes maybe it was the mother energy, but this is within us. Whether we're male or female, it's just the father energy, period. And based on channelings from the Council of Nine, and I'm very careful about where I get this information from, but from lots of clairvoyant work and lots of just experiences being in the wilderness and really tapping into energy and looking for really the truth, this information has absolutely come to be the closest and most in alignment with what I know to be true. And through muscle testing and really working this is what has come from it. So it was the Father that took charge and turned away from receiving the guidance from the Father and the other Trinity One members, which would be the central universe where each of these other universes are supposed to be, bringing in that to manifest souls of light. They were and are the archetypes of our own individual actions. This is the original archetype of this universe for this world, is that a father energy has, split away, which becomes somewhat patriarchal. It becomes a little bit more about the I self, the what I want, not what is best for the collective, for the whole, or for the union. So there was a troubled relationship that developed because the father energy split away. What became of them is that their relationship began to disintegrate. So here we are in the very origins of our universe dealing with an issue between the mother and father energy. It first started off as a divine trinity. It first started off that everything was in balance, and then this free will, when things got a little bit lower down, started to get out of whack. So the mother was in despair and couldn't understand his choices, and she wanted unity, and she was thrown into the void even, and her light was almost extinguished completely. And so we're left with the original archetype. Very much we see women who are holding on to victim energy and men who are holding on to control energy. I mean, these are sort of, I guess you could say, generalizations. But we see the woman acting patriarchal and men can become victims. So it's not really about the sex that we're in, it's the dynamic of the male ego, the feminine thing, but women can also be very masculine in their energy as well. So this is, like I said, again, not about gender. But that's kind of the blueprint we have, and we can see it in our culture. It doesn't take it doesn't take long for us to notice where this is manifested, and now we're seeing the origins. So Lucifer shows up. In their dissension and imbalance, Lucifer is the dark energy that split off from the Father. And that's really the lower self of the Father energy is Lucifer. And it's that ego, that negative ego, and it's that false light that, was at one time a very high angelic form. But if we name it, we start to blame, we start to think, oh, this is an individual Lucifer we should all be mad at. We have to understand that these are different forces in creation. We're made up of all of them. And it's better to understand it based on ourselves than looking outside of ourselves. So when I talk about this, let's think of our own inner union, the part of us that moves into the negative ego, that isn't about union anymore, but is all about the I am self. What can I get? What can I get from others? Me, which we can call the Lucifer energy. Sophia eventually produced Achamoth, the planet Earth, and personifications of the planet. And she is with the Christ energy. Zoe, her daughter, comes to Earth. So, this is something we see in other parallels. It's not just one channeling. I mean, there's a lot of different references to this, like folks like Rudolf Steiner. It was during the old moon stage of world development that the Holy Spirit implanted wisdom into the world, light. At this time, the angels were going through their human stage, and the astral body of the human being was being implanted into the physical and etheric sheath by higher beings. Lucifer had reached the highest position in the rank of angels, but he chose at this time to stay behind. That is to say, Lucifer had, by the end of moon evolution, reached the stage of beginning to work on his spirit self, turned his back on the Holy Spirit, and only was desirous to know his own light. He took part of the Holy Spirit light into himself and cut himself off from the sea of cosmic spirit light. He became an antagonist to the light of the Holy Spirit. So basically, it's the antagonist to union, because that's where the Holy Spirit energy comes in, source energy, and it's that desire to play the role of God. And we see that. We see that in the Illuminati. We see that with the Luciferian energy, trying to conquer nature, trying to take over. Not interested in union at all, but interested in division, because in division, that's where that energy has power. That's where it thrives. So to be successful in his plan to take over the universe and gain for himself the position of supreme God, Lucifer needs the energy of the mother. Lucifer used the mother because he could steal the woman's power of creating space for his own purposes. He did not want the mother, he just wanted her energy to help him usurp the role of the father God. So when we look at the feminine role, particularly in the beginning of creation, it's the womb, it's a container, it receives. So in the early stages when you're dealing with a split in the father energy, here you have this vulnerable womb all of a sudden birthing this Luciferian energy because it doesn't really have much of a choice. So you can't really have that dynamic being in charge of the universe without it needing to fall into matter to sort itself out. And we are kind of the product of that, different arrangements of these energies trying to bring it back to wholeness and back to the divine blueprint to compensate for what we've inherited. It's no different than what we inherit from our biological family. Whatever our parents did, we end up carrying, and it's our job to take it to the next level. We're dealing with that on a universal level here in this particular universe. So the best place we can really return to find some level of guidance is that central universe, the divine trinity. All these different archetypal forces aren't really the best examples, but they certainly show us what we've inherited, which is part of the mind control. It's part of the soul control. It's part of being, carrying this inheritance around and not being able to break the cycle. So Lucifer was able to access the energy of the self-begotten who can manifest himself, very similar to the magical child, but instead of it being the Christ energy, it's that division that's birthing demonic energy. That's why in ritual they try and conjure this up so that they can keep that alive. And that's why all the media distortions to keep that separation alive, the masculine and feminine distortions particularly. He is more a force or an archetype that can take over the role of the magical child by sabotaging unity. It is said that his line incarnates through the negative reptilians. So really the way the Trinity is supposed to work is the role in creation which the mother is supposed to perform is to open space so that the Father can fill and manifest the creation using the divine spark of original cause, the cosmic word or spirit known as the Logos. That's really where we're at. I mean, if it was ideal, the way we work with masculine and feminine energies to create for ourselves the desirous reality based on our dreams and our visions would be to hold this template. When we don't hold that template, we attract all sorts of crazy stuff, and we don't realize that it's a part of this inheritance that we carry. So acts of creation must be done through the light energy of the father-mother monad, but because of free will, duality and experimentation and curiosity comes into the picture. And I think we see that with the amount of genetic experimentation that goes on, the, putting, different life forms together to create beings that haven't ever existed before. This is what we've inherited, though. We are children of imbalanced creator parents. We heal them as we are their extensions. The central universe is where we can find guidance. As above, so below, but as below, so above. We change everything by shifting our energies because we feed the creator as much as it feeds us. We get downloaded the dynamics, but when we change them, we send that information up, and it actually changes the dynamic up there. And that's what the demiurge is, similar to the morphogenic field, the biosphere. That's, maybe considered a God force, but in actual fact, it's very shiftable, changeable, depending on our willingness to change the patterning that we have, taken on. When we change it down here, we shift the planet. So the further away from the monad source, the easier it is to have self-will. It is part of the learning process of God, Goddess that we are all a part of. The only beings that were able to create together full beings of light were the original godparents. And that's otherwise known as the Elohim. It's the plural, the masculine and feminine. And I'll explain why it became way more plural than that. It's because of all these different splittings. But any other combination was not sufficient. And when Lucifer created, his creations were lacking the ability to know how to make their way home to the true light. So if you're birthing something that is in dissension or not in unity, that soul carries that information. And so that's why we see a lot of people like, why are they so asleep? Or why are they so unconscious? Or why don't they not get it? Well, their soul was probably created in that vibration, and they don't really know how without guidance. And so that's what we're all here to do when we're trying to raise the frequency of this planet, is to recognize that we all are made the same on a spirit level, but on the soul level, we're dealing with dynamics in the universe that we probably don't even realize because of this dark force. And this dark force has a lot of power because, it has that self-begotten immortal energy, and reptilians are immortal. We have to just be senior to them. So each subsequent group that manifested from Lucifer down was basically flawed by the dissension which split the creative powers of the universal parent, setting them off on their own adventures and agendas. And that's from Peter Farley, The True Experiment. It's the one thing that I read that really resonates with the truth that I hold, because I wrote a book about this, got destroyed for whatever reasons, don't need to get into, or it's floating around somewhere in the web world of not downloaded to my computer just yet. And so in my research, I've just found a lot of parallel information that really resonates with what I was originally writing. Okay, so we have all that. That's just the universe and the creator parents, and these breakdowns and divisions. We have the aeonic worlds and then the archons, which are a little bit darker. that start to emerge out of that, but not quite yet. This is just still contained in the pleroma. The pleroma is beginning to get imbalanced. And if people understand Gnosticism, they've probably heard about the Sophia myths and the pleroma being imbalanced. Of course, they blame the feminine. They probably don't realize the deeper story of where this dark energy first came from and the vulnerability of the feminine in that picture. So Tiamat and Apsu are the primordial deep present at the creation of the universe. They contain the knowledgeable universe within a twin spiral. They represent entwined serpents uncoiling from the infinity of Namu, which is Sophia, the mother of the Agdawad. And Tiamat is basically the dragon queen. Some say that the twin serpents represent the double helix DNA. So, in the very beginning, what was DNA? It wasn't 12-strand, it was it was huge. But as we move through Lyra and we become physical manifestations, we move down to 12-strand. Well, look at us today, we're at 2. So we definitely, there's been a lot missing. And so this is our chance to kind of get more familiar with those energies, because it's our expansion and our consciousness which is going to upgrade our DNA, not, really anything else as effectively. So we're going to jump to the second root race. The first one is the Polarians. But the Hyperboreans are an important one, because this is the time where creation was just moving out of the cradle of Lyra and everything was just pretty tranquil. Before there was major attacks happening, and this is what it can actually look like. I mean, we were once in this state. The Hyperboreans supposedly are from Venus, but they're from, they're from that original place as well, but Venus had life on it. There is a lot of movement happening with the planetary bodies based on the different ages and eras and different changes that happened. The white gods were asexual and reproduced by non-physical means through spiritual plasmic projections, living in perpetual higher consciousness through the third eye. They harnessed the sacred vril, the green ray, as the black sun flowed through their sacred blood. And we hear about that energy as far as the Nazis and trying to create a super race or recover something that was once there, but they're not doing it through natural means. It's about harnessing the mother womb energy, which is very Luciferian, using the mother force energy for their own purposes. In whatever way these agendas, take place, without blaming anybody, there's just a large level of manipulation of how to take the power without the integrity, without understanding the inner work. And that's where technology comes in, where everything's externalized and then used in the wrong way without the spiritual development, which is, of course, what happened with Atlantis. So the true organic creation, when we think about the black sun, the vril energy, the black sun is also known as Isis, the Black Madonna, the Grand Central Sun, or the Black Hole. And that's Jay Widener says that. And so that's like the womb energy, and this is what's behind the actual physical sun we have, is what actually births everything. She is the embodiment of the matriarchal energy that comes from the Grand Central Sun, which gave life to all things, also the Black Madonna or the Black Sun. We are in alignment with the galactic core right now. And during this time, this is why it's such a critical time, and all these different distractions are trying to take us into that separation so we don't realize we're agents for a Luciferian agenda. I mean, there might be people that can say, hey, they've already signed up for it, they know it, they're a part of it, but they want us to become that, and that's where the infiltrations and the hybridization began to bring us into it all. So how it looks with the original root races and everything sort of tranquil. The Agdawad reality does not take an active part in creation. These are 4 pairs that existed in the pleromic worlds. So the Agdawad reality does not take an active part in creation, but is still present as the underlying order. The fundamental structure of the universal matrix is called Mat. It's truth, order, justice, and governance of the universe. Thoth is the male counterpart. So they're not supposed to take an active part. This is just the God source just doing God source stuff. But when you have this imbalance and this free will dissension and this Luciferian energy, you can't really hold balance very well in that region. So Mat is the foundation of Ra and his creations. Thoth laid the egg that Ra came out of in the form of an ibis. Hathor is the consort of Ra. Agdawad is where the cosmic egg is formed, so all these aspects are one, but the divisions are the many aspects of the creator parents. Hathor, mother, Tiamat, womb, Mat, balance, and cosmic law. So during this time, when everything was, basically tranquil and we're dealing with, the Hyperboreans, we're gradually making a transition into the Lemurian root races. And during this time, the master race of beings created approximately 560 million years ago upon the planet Terra. Many extraterrestrial and metaterrestrial races combine their genetic and energetic makeup to create a race that would serve as guardians of the planet Terra. About 8 million years into their evolution, the Terranisium race divided into 2 primary racial strains that evolved together on one large landmass called Eden. The Atlanteans, which are the Atlanteans, and the Lemurians. Both races carried the original 12-strand DNA, but there was mingling and mutations and digressions from interstellar interbreeding with various unrelated ET strains. So when we said subsequent acts of creation, the Luciferian energy was not creating the light souls like the mother-father. These are these extraterrestrial strains. And the Luciferian energy was incarnating through them. So I don't know what happened here, but during the first half of the Lumerian age, the involvement of extraterrestrials was the role of non-intervention. And then there was something called the Titan Project, and renegade reptilians broke the agreements. That's from Mary Sutherland. And during this time, too, you hear about the Hathors and the Sanat Kumara and all that sort of stuff. And that was just connecting the beingness to the Creator. There was no worship. There was no deities. This was just being in the beingness and the zero-point energy, in the nowness that we don't really have anymore. I'm not sure what's going on with these slides. But anyway, so there was an attack on the beings in Lyra from the Dracos. And basically, folks like Stuart Swerdlow have said that the the Draconians came in from an alternate universe, and that there was some sort of break and leak that they were able to come into this universe. And so when we think of the creator parents and dissension between them, it almost holds one vulnerable for this type of thing to happen. In this parallel universe, the Draconian energy were mind parasites, and they sucked up everything until there was nothing there. So when we think of universal takeover by these dark forces, or we've seen alien movies where they're all parasites and they suck the life out of everybody until there's nothing, there actually was a universe like that. And so they're trying to do the same thing here. But the only thing that they can get in on is disunion. That's why unity consciousness, it just sounds like fluffy and fun, but it's pretty critical. So, instead of the universe expressed, okay, so here we have more than one creation here. And so one would think, well, wasn't there just one Big Bang? In actual fact, I don't think there was. And scientist Sir Roger Penrose agrees. Instead of the universe inexplicably springing into existence from a mysterious initial singularity, the Big Bang was a collision between two universes like ours, existing as parallel membranes floating in a higher dimensional space that we're not aware of. One Big Bang is followed by another in a potentially endless series of cosmic cycles, each one spelling the end of a universe and the beginning of a new one. Not one Big Bang, but many. So this is what we're dealing with, you know. Now all of a sudden the sun energy is being born and we've got Ra. Well, before that there was none of that. But when you're dealing with, you know, attacks and you're dealing with free will at the expense of others, it's not just free will like explore the universe and learn from right and wrong. There's massive like killing going on. 50 billion or billion Lyrans were killed. And certain agendas were put in place that were absolutely stealing the free will of others, so an intervention on some level had to happen. And it's beginning to happen here, but it starts to change form. So the sun is born. This is more than one Big Bang. This is another creation, sort of on top of a creation. This is where we see the different ages and the root races. And you know, the Aztec calendar shows all these different ages where there's one and then a completely new one. So the egg blasts forth from the first cosmic Big Bang, and the sun is born, the primeval mound. He is surrounded by the feminine element Hathor. He then spits out the first of the divine qualities or powers, Shu and Tefnut, and then Geb and Nut. So there was more that ended up issuing forth because the Pleroma couldn't hold the imbalance. So instead of just air and water and earth and fire being birthed in this time, this new creation of deity, Isis and Osiris, Seth and Nephthys, Thoth and Horus, 7 Elohim and 9 Ennead and 8 Ogdoad. The Ogdoad stayed, but then we have like these councils and these deities and these pantheons. We see them in Greek pantheons, the Sumerian pantheons, the Egyptian pantheons. What was once unmanifest is now manifesting because you can't sort out these sort of issues in the Pleroma when that's supposed to be the Godhead. So that's why they came to Earth or got close to Earth, to begin to go through certain levels of experiences in order for them to grow, and we're their inheritance. So could this be how Yahweh came into the picture as the demiurge, both aspects of the Father? Split energies, now lower deities at war with each other, changing the nature of everything. And this is the thing that we hear with the warring brothers, Enki and Enlil, Cain and Abel, Osiris and Seth. Obviously there's been some split in the father energy, which originated with the Luciferian energy. So Mot could not, as balance and order and cosmic law, was not able to contain this imbalance within her. Everything spilled forth. You've got Anu, who created Enki and Enlil, then Enki and Enlil, who created Marduk. Marduk is also considered to be Ra, who's the father of Osiris and Set. And then we got planets like Maldek and Mars that are carrying these Sirian and Orionite energy and this dueling brother thing. And even Ra is attacked by Edep, Typhon, and Set. So this is where this Luciferian energy, which is dragon energy, is falling into a lower octave, which is reptilian. On the highest level, it's dragon energy, connecting to the dragon queens, and that sort of, you got cosmic law and dragon energy. But as you break it down, you start to get into false patriarchy, false law, and then reptilian energy, which is the misuse of sexual energy. It's absolutely, we see it in dark rituals, the abuse of children. It's all getting so broken down and so disconnected that there's no integrity left, there's no connection to source, and that's what the splitting off did. It just keeps creating these lower levels and lower octaves of this energy. So the origins of the Atlantean civilization go back in time, go back to the time of decimation of Mars and Maldek, and the lower deity forces that are Luciferian. The Maldek planet actually is connected to Lucifer, and as it's starting to come down into the physical matter, these are the two planetary bodies, and of course things got out of control. This is when the Merkaba ended up being externalized and becoming more about technology. And these are the two primary groups at odds with each other who did not join the Positive Confederation. So the reptilians came and fed on the weakness that started to take place because of the disconnection of unity. And so these bodies ended up coming into the Lumerians, and that's where the Atlantean civilization developed. Maldek completely exploded, became the asteroid belt, and Mars lost all life on it. And then these souls started to incarnate here and ended up bringing all this egoic dark energy to Lemuria, and that's where Atlantis started to get out of control, because they were kind of working side by side. The Lemurians had an emotional nature. It was considered to be the motherland. They were less aggressive, more intuitive, and more artistic, and concerned with the creative side of their beings. And then the Atlanteans, who co-created with the Lumerians for a long period of time, and were considered the fatherland mentality. But now you have this Mars-Maldek energy, which is very egoic, very service to self, all of a sudden not having anywhere to go, coming into the Earth energy, which at that time was different than the Earth we have now. So when these two cultures clashed, it was like an archetypal battle of mother versus the father. And it was definitely like a new version of what happened in the very beginning of the mother being used, not appreciated, and not utilized in co-creation, but the absolute takeover. And so we see this where Atlantis tries to take over Lemuria. And it's the Mars-Maldek energy, it's an out-of-control ego. You remove that, and it's in balance, like the right and left brain. And this is what we're learning about our ego. Where are we inheriting these patterns where we're carrying such negative ego energy that we're destroying union in our life, we're destroying union between each other? Well, this is where it originates. And this is why this is good for Free Your Mind Conference, because we're being held to this. I mean, this is so a part of who we are, we don't even notice the origins. So when we point it out and we can see the geology, and we can see that these are actual events that carry energetic imprints that we have picked up on, we can start to say, hey, let's put an end to this. And so there were the Orion Wars that happened between the two, and the misuse of energy brought that to Atlantis, and then the dark sorcerer energy and just everything. Maldek and Mars are highly egoic, service-to-self energies that seem to bring down the vibration of Atlantis and Lemuria, and this is where the roots of patriarchy began, and Lucifer's earthly presence eventually followed. And the first Adam and Eve existed before this time. There's actually been a few seedings of the Adam and Eve energy. The Bible codes confirm underneath its hidden layers that Rahab-Maldek was indeed Lucifer's son, the ancient seed of power. Lucifer's rebellion involving one-third of the angels happened before the recreation of the earth. After the earth was recreated, a second group of angels called the Watchers rebelled against God and left their first estate to cohabitate with the women on earth. The fallen seraphim and then the fallen Elohim. Lucifer's fall happened, and then Sophia's creation of the demiurge. And it just goes on, and it's just this breaking down. You see the origins, and just the physical world ends up as above, so below, doing the exact same thing. And then here we are, humans, mini Earths, mini universes that surround us, deciding how are we going to play with these energies? What are we going to empower within ourselves? And we either match it without even thinking and carry on these patterns and blueprints, or we say, let's restore it, let's get back to source. And that's where we are now. So the Anunnaki actually influenced Atlantis, coming from Mars and Maldek, because they had lost the resources because they were originally from Sirius. We could, like I said, this could be days and days and days. I'm trying to run through it to make a very important point, a few important points. But Atlantis sought control over the Lumerians. The experiment with power generation They experimented with power generation through Tara's core. The Lemurians asked for assistance from Syrian Council HU2 and Elohim HU3, which are harmonic universes, different higher dimensions. And they moved to Mu. We hear about Mu connected to Lemuria. And then eventually they went to below Shasta when the disaster happened. So we hear about the beings that are under Shasta. And then T2 experiment was the seeding of the 12 tribes. So the Lemurians knew that something was happening. Once Mars and Maldek, crashed and the soul started to incarnate, it was obvious that something huge was changing. And this is where the new Earth comes in. Gaia is not the original Earth. Tiamat is. What Gaia represents is an intervention from the goddess herself, who morphed into the physical plane to assist us. Because in order to reestablish unity, if the mother energy is being used, what the heck is she supposed to do? I don't know, become a planet? Sure. So, here we are. Rudolf Steiner tells us that it was from the moon sphere that a counterbalance of forces had to rain down on humanity. The moon sphere is where dwelt those spirits that had renounced their rightful place on the sun, the Elohim. These beings had to give up their right to exist in the sphere of the sun to be near the earth in order to prevent this fall from going too far. And so as the imbalance started getting worse, it's almost like a magnetic pull brought Sophia out of the pleroma and she fell. Now, there's a lot of texts out there that tell a different story. After God knows how many years of research and deep, deep inner work and just really paying attention to this process, it's a little bit different than that, than maybe what other people have read. This was to counterbalance, so this fall and just being pulled into this was counterbalanced. I mean, the fact that all this destruction was beginning to happen and that souls would not be able to achieve returning to source because the Luciferian energy was much stronger, and because they are not full souls of light, they can easily capture souls and take them away from that path, anybody who is in a similar boat. So this was counterbalanced by the descent of the archangelic being of Anthrosophia, whose task it was to sacrifice her connection to the divine Sophia, which is her mother, she's a part of, she split away. This means that she sacrificed her consciousness of the divine Sophia in those higher realms in which she resides in order to accompany humanity in its development and inspire its progress. The Gnostics call the estrangement of the being of Anthrosophia from the divine Sophia a death. They called it Achamoth, the death of the Sophia. Lucifer was known in the mysteries to have killed the Sophia. So we don't really hear about Sophia's fall being because Lucifer killed her. We hear about, she was passionate and expanded beyond the pleroma and fell. There's a little bit more to it when you look at the conditions that happened previous to that. And it's part of the mother energy wishing to assist humanity when it takes that human form to come back to the fullness of real unity, which connects to the main central universe where everything didn't have duality in the way that we're seeing it. So when Sophia fell, she fell into her own dream, and the confusion it caused formed the demiurge, that the alchemy of the Venus path would eventually lift, since it holds good and evil. Now, that's the heart energy, and we'll get into that. This is not about separating deities. This is about understanding we're made of all this. So when I talk about the Sophia energy, I'm talking about your inner divine feminine, your heart energy, your ability to do the alchemy, to bring things back into union. And so Lucifer's fall from heaven is the same time Sophia intervened, because as Lucifer on Maldek starts to incarnate now on the earth, this is not just some reptilian attack on Lyra. This is now, we're being seated with this battle, and we're caught in the middle. And we're caught in the middle in our own consciousness. So approximately 550 million years ago, the power generator crystals deep underground in Atlantis exploded due to the Templar solar initiate's misuse of power from Terra's planetary core. This created a chain reaction of implosion within Terra's planetary grid. These planets did not birth into HU when they fell, literally fell. This is what created 3D Earth. So basically, the way things were before Gaia, the new Earth, came into the picture, we're dealing with Lemurian Atlantis, the right and left brain, and then this ego power moving into this and splitting apart the masculine and feminine. Now all of a sudden you have all these different planetary bodies that weren't there before. Now we have Nibiru. Maldek is imploded, it became the asteroid belt. Nibiru split off from Maldek. That's why when we hear about Nibiru, it's a bit questionable whether or not this makes a 3,600-year orbit, but basically it's kind of like a pirate ship kind of floating around. And it's holding a lot of displaced beings that lost their home worlds. So we've got Mercury, we've got Venus, we've got Earth, we've got Mars. We don't have Maldek anymore, it's been exploded, but those energies have now become a part of the Earth, now become a part of all of us, that negative ego, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. So basically the fragments of Terra became part of the unified field morphogenic field structure of this world. The event of Terra's cataclysm became known as the fall of man. The consciousness of the beings that were blown apart in Terra's fall also fell into HU1. The event is interwoven with other Earth history events like the flood. So now we're in 3D Earth. We got a 3D vibration and the beginning of being taken advantage of. So the Sumerians or Zachariah Stitchin, talk about the Anunnaki and us being created from them, but this whole other world existed before all that we don't really know about. And this is where the Anunnaki come in and start to manipulate, because they see, wow, everything's exploded and the Earth is sort of completely and totally off its axis. It's almost like being in a car accident, the planetary body, and we're sort of the ones recovering. We're kind of, do you ever feel like you're in rehab sometimes, learning to be in a physical body? Like, I am. I'm like, I just paid a bill, I just cut my nails. I'm like, I'm human, I can do it. And, and we're trying to recover our memories and all this stuff. When Sophia morphed into the physical body, she was also morphed into a planetary body that would take this long to get back in line with the galactic plane. That's what we've been doing. We've been in a car wreck many thousand years ago, a cosmic catastrophe, and we've been realigning ever since. The planetary body is now in alignment, but this whole other agenda has been trying to take advantage of our progress by steering us in the other direction, when what's available is actually really healing and transforming and recognizing and remembering who we are. So that's what creates these different timelines. The artificial timelines are the ones that are seeking to pull us away from this. And the organic ascension timeline has to do with the presence of the goddess, the earth energies, the true unity of the masculine and feminine without that split and this Luciferian energy that likes to get in the way. So according to the Sumerian sacred text, the elder gods, the Anunnaki, battled with and destroyed the ancient ones, and specifically Tiamat, their queen. This is when heaven and earth were divided, and that's when Sophia fell in and took upon herself becoming a planetary body to assist. The Anunnaki eventually won the battle, and they divided up parts of the earth between them. It's only after that mankind was created as a slave race. So she was killed by the sun god. Marduk, also considered to be Ra, and divided heaven and earth. And this was because all these other deities were birthed. I mean, it wasn't that this was intentional to split all this, but once Lucifer was kind of bouncing around, it was sort of like, okay, creation's just sort of like a mess now. So now, in this rehabilitation process that we're in, it's our free will choices to know exactly what we're dealing with and to pay attention to the different forces that we've inherited. So the fallen, the many different fallen races who carry the patterning of the fallen Lucifer and the rebellion, they are carrying, the many different fallen races who carry the patterning of the fallen Lucifer and the rebellion, and also other races that have digressed from their original 12-strand DNA, have set forth for control and domination of the stargates of our time matrix. It's considered to be the quest for the Holy Grail. So here we are in this new Earth. There's all these beings that haven't really taken part in the physical aspect of it, that have come to take advantage. And some have actually destroyed their capacity of 12-strand DNA to be unable to have higher beings incarnate through their tribes so that they can make sure that they have world domination. Because they're pissed at the mother energy for becoming a planet. Because they're like, wow, all people need to do is connect with nature and connect with cosmos, and there's this divine human, and we've all digressed, and we're sort of demonic, and we want control, and look at the potential here because they're going to usurp us. And the Luciferian energy wanted to be the ones to do that, not humans. So that's why there's a battle. And that's why the divine feminine energy is so attacked, because it's a huge threat. So when we're freaking out and we look at the chemtrails and this and that, just remember, not the feminine energy is in, the physical female, but your feminine energy, your intuition, your connection to the earth and cosmos, your ability to birth, and your ability to connect with the masculine and just create that regenerative flow. So in the Pistis Sophia, they say that Achamoth created the demiurge. That's a portion of Sophia that came in. And it's because it expanded beyond the plural. It could not hold the drama that was going on there. And so she's chosen to assist humanity in its progress. Gnostic texts seem to distort some of this. So now trapped in matter, all beings need to initiate themselves out of the realm of the lower forces. The transformation of the dark forces has now been initiated. And then dragon and justice embracing both will end the battle. And this is what we need to do. When we connect with our kundalini, our dragon energy, our sexual energy, we have to remember cosmic law, integrity, higher self. These two are not supposed to work separate from each other. And that's what we're seeing in our world. We see false patriarchy, we see the misuse of sexual energy. These are both really low energies. But when we raise both of them to the highest level, we get to experience both. And it connects us to the earth. It blows out our chakras to the highest of levels. And we can experience both aspects instead of choosing one over the other, because they're the ones that are at war with each other. The reptilian energy is in battle with the patriarchy, or the law of religion, but yet it's set it up that way so that people rebel and then become like that. So good cop, bad cop, and I'm going to get into that a little bit more, but it's seeded from this Luciferian energy that loves to see this game being played for this very reason. So as I was talking about the demiurge and the archons, there's archangels and archdemons. Not all archons are negative, but they're considered archons because, and the Elohim and the God force is considered plural now because we have pantheons. But why? It's because of all these different splittings that happen. The Lucifer energy created such a division in the creator parents that it's not considered one god or goddess anymore. There's all these different personality types. And it's not about, empowering that. It's about understanding that we inherited those different personality types, those different relationships. We see it in our parents. We see it when people, identify with Athena or identify with, the dark aspects. And what it did was create sub-personalities that got easily programmed. So the divine masculine not working together, they're sub-personalities to create programmings of like the seductress archetype or the player archetype, where everybody's kind of running amok, forgetting about union, but it's these splittings, and they're not really from God. They just got taken advantage of because of this Luciferian energy that carries a similar power. So we got to watch our behaviors and watch, to begin the restoration process. So this sort of explains the necessity of the fall of Sophia. This explains, based on the Luciferian presence, that the diversion of the Father God from the light of the true Father in the central universe is why there needed to be an intervention, or else, just like the parallel universe that became a mind parasite that swallowed everything up, it's got that same thing because it's not created out of light, it's created out of the division. That father energy that split into the negative was because there was no union. It wasn't birthed in the normal way. It was birthed because of dissension, birthed out of darkness. And that's why it carries the false light of the ego. And we can redeem that energy. This is what the Venus path does. We go into the darkness and we raise it back up again. It's not about banishing any of it. It's about reintegrating it and realigning it. So the intervention has to do with bringing souls back to the light, bringing the souls home, back to the Holy Spirit and the Father, which is the monad. So the Nag Hammadi, this is a quote from John Lash. She morphed from a pure energetic state, stellar plasma, into the material body of the earth. Hence her story describes the origins of the earth. The task of Sophia, our inner divine feminine, is to create through wisdom a suitable vessel and human beings for the Holy Spirit, and also to reflect the Holy Spirit being of the Trinity towards human beings on earth by way of the lower triad of her own being. That's Akamat. By coming into the physical, this is how to assist all these different creations that were born at the dissension of the mother and father energy. The divine Sophia reflected this as Isis, and when it came from the region of the bull, she was seen as Hathor. So when the second Earth came about, when we lost the first Earth and this big cosmic catastrophe happened, the DNA changed, and we see this reflected in the stories about the tree. The bird DNA, the reptilian DNA is very much like Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. But when the tree changed, it became all about sacred union to restore the split. This is how the two trees came about, the tree of knowledge and the tree of life. This was a necessity since union had been disrupted. Lemurian Atlantean split of the mother-father energy. So Inanna that we see coming into the Anunnaki is actually Sophia, who has fallen, that came into this particular being. And when the flood happened, she grabbed the tree that was now uprooted because there was a big major pole shift, and she turned that tree into a sacred marriage bed. And that the rest of her existence in this particular reality, in 3D reality, would be all about Eros, Gamos, and sacred union, to restore the union. Now the tree isn't about our DNA anymore, it's about, I mean it is, but our DNA is now representing the split of masculine and feminine. That's why it's dumbed down. The junk DNA has a lot to do with the mother energy, and because it's split, the only way for us to really get it back is to understand unity, and this is what this particular tree represents. And because death was created in this process, in a certain way, she has to go on the underworld journey. If anybody hears about the archetypal story and mythology of Inanna going through the 7 gates of hell to meet with her dark sister, this was all created when Atlantis fell and the new earth energy came about. All of a sudden we've got a goddess in the underworld, the Kali energy and rage. Then we have the sister, who's the light, because these are all parts of herself, because she exploded too. gathering all her many aspects by going on this journey into the underworld, collecting all her many aspects back into wholeness, and uniting with the father energy again. This is the new tree. It's uprooted. So when we look at the Kabbalah and we look at the model, Doth, which used to be the root system, is now right below the divine parents. So we have to initiate ourselves, go through the dark night of the soul to even understand what we're forgetting, make Yudin happen again, and then boom, Kether, the crown, and then our galactic chakras. So the Kabbalah and the model of the Tree of Life is actually different because of this. And this is what she holds so that we can all remember that this is the way to upgrade DNA and get ourselves back, and that's the gifts she's brought, is sacred union. And if there was never a split, then we would have had just the DNA that we would have had, but that's not the case. So Lucifer's arrival on Earth in a physical incarnation coincided with the beginnings of civilization of mankind after the flood. He knew that this would be the best opportunity to seed himself into the culture and into the genes of those on planet Earth, especially after the planet Maldak blew up in his face. And that's from Peter Farley. So basically the story of Adam and Eve has a lot to do with a later Adam and Eve creation. And now it's based on the Anunnaki and these lower creator gods that are tinkering with our DNA, because now we're being taken advantage of. The old Earth is gone, we're in this new Earth, nobody can remember who they are, and the vibrational disruption, hold on a second, when the Earth's natural resonance tone was replaced by erratic frequency barrier emissions from the planet's core, those of the elder race and all other forms of life that existed on Earth at that time began to detrimentally mutate biologically. At the lowest point of mutation or de-evolution, the once tall and intelligent elder race became reduced to 3-foot tall creatures that could not use hardly any of their original mental abilities, and in fact survive only by what we refer to as animal instinct. So when we went from like higher dimensional Earth to 3D Earth, we became Neanderthals. So when the Anunnaki say, oh yeah, we upgraded the DNA, or whoever says that they did, actually they didn't. We were doing really great before this big catastrophe happened. We turned, like, because the poles and everything got out of whack, we digressed back into sort of this Neanderthal shape and behavior, and then they upgraded our DNA, but they only upgraded it so much so that we could be their slaves, not so that we could be upgraded or assisted back to what we used to be. And this is where we got taken advantage of. So the new tree has to do with union, has to do with bringing those two forces together again. And like I said, we've been in a rehabilitation process. So the Bible codes confirm that the Anunnaki had offspring called the Nephilim that were giants. The Anunnaki are the Watchers. There are two different factions within the Anunnaki, the Enki and the Enlil. The Draconians infiltrated and inbred with both groups, the Anunnaki. And the Draconians are Lucifer. So this one slide represents how the DNA has been overwhelmed with this draconian energy, so that we'd kind of be stuck in our reptilian brain, and so that the Nephilim that were manipulated would be relating to them as their masters and their gods. And this is what the Illuminati is all about. And when we hear about the reptilians taking over or whatever, or them being in charge, this has a lot to do with the DNA manipulation. It was done for a specific reason. Isn't it cool how my slides are all weird? So that's the manipulation. So basically, when the Anunnaki came, this was the third set of Adam and Eves, because we had different root races in different eras and different experimentations, because humanity really is an experiment. Obviously, it hasn't gone so well. This is kind of like the final one, at least in this particular situation. So the third set of Adam and Eve were the ones created from Neanderthals more than 40,000 years ago by the Anunnaki after the 50,000 BC catastrophe that sank part of the Atlantean continent and devastated much of mankind around the planet. They upgraded, but upgraded in a way that they could still allow them control. They took advantage of humans after Atlantis sank and rewrote the history. Junk DNA holds the missing aspects. And, so that's what we're dealing with. And then, of course, there was the final flood after Adam and Eve, when everything just kind of got cleared out. And this is when we became more densified and much more in the physical density than we've ever been. I mean, we're about as human as we've ever been, when we used to be very much beyond that. And so we got the tree of good and evil, our DNA is dumbed down, the tree of life represented the sacred marriage bed, but that was sort of abandoned because that still would have kept us a little bit ignorant to everything that came before, but it did represent a certain level of immortality and understanding sacred union. So we chose, or Adam and Eve, the manipulated version of them, because this is a later version, they chose the tree of good and evil. So where are we right now with the tree of knowledge, learning knowledge? Here we are at a conference talking about knowledge, doing exactly what the tree was set up to do, which is for us to understand our origins and the truth of what's really come down. Of course, there's going to be gray areas. I'm not claiming to have the absolute truth, but this is pretty darn close. And when we're thinking about the tree of good and evil, we're learning about what this evil infiltration is all about. There's lessons there. It's about learning how to use our sexual energy correctly. But because there's massive manipulation, it hasn't been a very fair school because of all the mind control, and we'll talk a little bit later about, just in a minute actually, what was set in place to make these lessons almost impossible. But the human spirit doesn't know the word impossible. Everything that it's up against pales in comparison when we focus on that part of who we are. But we've been in this reincarnation. We've been dealing with the zodiac, which has been an assistance for us to have a tool to know where our strengths and weaknesses are, where we're giving our power away, where the most concentration of energies are in our life to achieve these lessons, to understand who we are. But the controllers are furious at our potential to be empowered with true gnosis and do all they can to steer us towards evil and enslavement. Coming into balance restores the tree, which restores our 12-strand DNA, the tree of life, sacred union, immortality, kundalini with the sacred union, back to the feathered serpent. That's the restoration of our DNA. But there's a major risk going to the tree of good and evil because humanity really has chosen more evil than good. But that really depends on who you are. So the splitting of the Father, just a quick rundown in case people got confused. You got the fallen seraphim, the Enki Lucifer, reptilian grave demons, the higher octave being the dragon Kundalini. Then you have the fallen Elohim, which connect more to the Nordics, the false patriarchy, Enlil, Jehovah, Yahweh. They are the ones that kind of behind cleansing the planet, trying to get rid of that reptilian force. But they were still a lower octave of the God force. So many joined Lucifer's rebellion, and the hybridization and the infiltration of higher races is what kind of has created like all this diversion. The higher octave of the fallen element, those cosmic law, Ma'at, the goddess sacred union, and Illuminati is the hybrids, the Nephilim, and then they use the Aryans to kind of fight their war for them. And that, like I said, there's so much to cover that we're just kind of running through this kind of fast. But the law of one states, the raw material, that the Yahweh energy, there's an imposter. So when we hear about the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not, and religion and everything like that, that's not really coming from the true Yahweh energy. That got infiltrated as well. And that's to create a certain level of rebellion against religion. So here we are kind of like, there's nowhere to really turn. Whether it's being rebellious and like being all about freedom to the expense of maybe our integrity, or it's all about, being so constricted that we repress everything and we're religious, neither one of those poles work. And the thing is, it's not about choosing a polarity, it's choosing wholeness and recognizing that we're made of all this, and it's about bringing it back together into balance. And so the Gen Isis, this was a faction of the Anunnaki that were not aligned with Enki and Enlil's intention to create warring races of slaves with a degraded genetic code. The Gen Isis faction brought the purity of the highest spiritual intentions to Earth. From Ninhursag, Isis's line came the Holy Grail bloodline in the Red Hand Order of Melchizedek. This is also can be known as the Orphan. The one that I was saying in the beginning is where this got broken down into. The Tyrannia, I can't even say it, Hunism. So the Gene Isis faction was very aware that Enlil and Enki's engineered races had the ability and potential derived from King Anu's royal blood to evolve beyond the degraded genetic programming and even the Anunnaki themselves. It was decided that they would maintain a presence on the earth as stewards for that eventual day when humanity would cross the evolutionary threshold beyond the God spell and beyond the Anunnaki DNA programming. So, this is where we see the seeded races, and all of us in the room have more connected to that. And the thing is, no matter what our genetics are, no matter how damaged or whatever bloodlines we're from, none of that matters. Our consciousness trumps all of it. And so even if there are these seeded races, they're no more special. They just hold the sacred flame to help everybody else wake up. Because once you wake up, you're there. We're all equals. The only difference in who we are is maybe who's more awake, who's more conscious. But we're not fixed to our DNA, we're not fixed to our genetics, but there are certain lines that are going to help us bounce back and get it back, and that's those lines, but they have been manipulated as well. So after that flood, we hear about Nimrod, and he sought to restore the pre-flood system by world government led by a priest king and powered directly by Lucifer. When God spoiled Nimrod's plan, Lucifer's strategy was altered to set up a system of false religions that would hold in store the powerful ancient mysteries until the time where Lucifer would be successful in establishing such a kingdom. So this is really what religion has been. And we've seen it over time become more and more infiltrated, more and more molesters, more and more draconian influence. It has absolutely gotten darker and darker and darker. And that's because deep underground, the Illuminati that's been running the show has been making it so. And they're going to be going from covert to overt. And these systems have been set up, specifically to kind of blind people until they capture them, then the real truth comes out. So they use the goddess energy during that time. The Venus transit connects to this. She's connected to Venus. Lucifer's connected to Venus, but the dark light of the ego. So the Gaia-Sophia energy is connected to Venus as well, but it's all about going into the underworld, creating the alchemy, and coming back up again. The morning and evening star. And so after that final flood, you hear about Venus rising out of the waters, and actually there's been so much rewritten history about her role and her connection to Nimrod and this and that. But after all that was sort of done, they found that when she passed away and transitioned, she turned into a dove, and when she was born from the sea, and she was taken in, a lot of stories were written by those at the time that said, there's something a little bit different about this because the nature in which she died. And this connects to the Christ story and how later on that a lot of that had to be hidden. The Christ story isn't actually what the real truth is. That could be a whole other presentation. But what happened after the final flood, after the final Adam and Eve that was very manipulated and we were seated as a slave race, then all these technologies come in, these mind control technologies. And this is the Grail quest. It has to do with having control of the stargates, having control of the ascension process so that it cannot happen. So because the humans were reseeded and the goddess energy is here, they set these technologies in place to prevent our ability to be where we are right now, which is ascending. And these technologies are part of the Luciferian rebellion that is absolutely against the feminine because he wants to be God. And that's the negative ego that shows up in relationships, that wants to be in charge, that wants to be right. And we've inherited all this. So basically, what it's called is the Nibirian dyadic crystal grid. It's in operation today, and it serves as a key role in the potential outcome of this period that we're in between 2000 and 2017. They want to destroy Stargate 12, which has to do with our 12-strand DNA, to keep us from having the potential to be what we used to be. And that would really lift a veil and enable us to not have to go through this reincarnation cycle anymore. So after this manipulation of Adam and Eve and everything that was set up, just in case that wasn't good enough, they set up something that is sourced out of Stonehenge, England. And all the different programmings and distortions that people are under, the spell that they're put under, gets siphoned into this and creates this false etheric grid. And the chemtrails have to do with it, everything has to do with it. Everything that we see in this world that's false has to do with this technology that was set up. It's the Nibirian dyadic crystal checkerboard mutation has reduced human lifespan, chemical DNA, brain function, and blocked race memory since 25,500. So not only was history rewritten, technology has been used to get in the way of our ability to remember anything that's even naturally occurring. If we even can get in touch with that after we're trying to remember everything, we're bombarded with technologies that'll just make sure that we don't do so well. So if we're not all patting ourselves on the back for sitting here today, after we move through all that, and we're awake enough, and we're clear enough, and we just at least are getting a taste of what the real stuff is, I mean, I think it's really incredible because everything has been stacked against us, and we have triumphed. So we got to get over this sort of, and I was mentioning this morning, being so hard on ourselves for not being perfect, or for not doing it right. I mean, we have been completely onslaughted in so many ways, but yet we've been part of it from the beginning. And if we really soul search, we can remember this and really rebuild ourselves. So it's also called the Nephilim Reversal Grid. This is from Lisa Renee, comprising primarily of fallen element genetic lines. This reversal network was a rebellion to the hybridization attempts of Lyran Elohim races who were responsible in commissioning Nephilim races for genetic hybridization healing. The failure of that program, the banishment of the Nephilim, and the killing of that race resulted in wars, and subsequently the energy was placed in the UK to reverse all hybridized genetics, especially any genetic material that was designed to unify or marry genetics. So check out all the technology. The Luciferian, these are dark occult technologies that are Luciferian in nature, and they are doing everything that they can to keep relationships severed. So a lot of people that experience attack, you can blame your partner, and that's good because you don't want to blame it on technology all the time. But you got to step back and just remember, maybe you are being attacked. Maybe you are carrying some sort of programming, or there's some weakness that's being, that's jumping in there to make it a hell of a lot worse than it needs to be. Because the last thing that they want on this earth, the greatest enemy, is sacred union. It doesn't mean, you're a perfect marriage partner that's going to show up, and if you don't have it, you're missing something. It's that sacred marriage within, that merging of the masculine and feminine, because that's what creates the magical child. When we live in separation, when we're out of balance, we generate a Luciferian energy within ourselves, which is demonic, and we create all sorts of catastrophes for ourselves. We don't know why there's dark energy around us, but we have to look at ourselves. What are we holding? What imprints have we inherited? Where are these technologies getting in our way? And the way it plays out on a mythological level is in the story of Persephone and Hades. The feminine is exiled, the masculine is in charge, and we've got the separation from nature, and we've also got the programmed male and female. Machiavellian theory teaches that the best way to win a war is to divide and conquer. This way the energies stay split. That is what Lucifer did with the creator parents, pitting one against the other. He deepens the rifts that already exist. Those who follow him use the same method. The archetype of divorce and the traumatized child is what we're carrying. So not only do we probably have screwed up biological parents that modeled for us, our creator parents too. So it takes a lot of strength to just push all that away and get real deep into ourselves and recover that divine blueprint. I call it archaeology of the soul. It's in there. Nobody can take it away, but they can certainly manipulate you away from it. And that's what all these programmings seek to do. Separation, separation. The programmings of the masculine and feminine, all the superficiality that completely focuses on stuff that doesn't really matter is a part of it. So the goddess seeded us with divine potential, the divine spark. Archons are jealous and want to play the gods by keeping us trapped in the time loop. The Luciferian agenda are the deceptions that lead us astray. Lucifer takes over the power of the demiurge, because in the garden, or whatever, this Enlil energy, that was his brother, and it wasn't really the true Yahweh or the way the demiurge is supposed to work, but it's like the morphogenetic field, in the sense that these are different qualities of deity behaviors, different aspects of the creator that we inherit, but when we overcome it, we actually change the demiurge, we purify it, because it's like a filter. It stands between the energy matrix and the time matrix. When we change who we are, we change the environment, and it feeds the collective. That's why the Hawkins scale is the Hawkins scale, because one person holding a high frequency can change it for everybody else, because the demiurge isn't fixed. Nothing like that is fixed. It's our inheritance. So another quote from Lisa about where we are right now. For the first time in this ascension cycle, the physical being is becoming the consciousness tool that can open stargates and thereby direct the consciousness power. It is internally accessed. However, the consciousness tool cannot be stolen or misdirected, as it is powered only by the physical vehicle internally directed by God or unity consciousness. So this is the natural stargates. When we get in touch with this internal unity, we open natural stargates. It's also we are stargates. We open our galactic chakras, we get in touch with source. The technologies that I was talking about are to shut that down, and they create artificial stargates. They commute with extraterrestrial energies, they bring in dark energies, they use ritual to bring in demonic energies for power. And this is the battle right now, is their externalization of this knowledge and our internalization and awakening, which is what counteracts it. So they externalize, we internalize. When we internalize, we counteract them. When they externalize, we're just attacked with it, but it holds no weight when we do the inner work and we rise above it. And that's where we are right now. The Grail has been identified with alchemy, the science of concentrating vital currents and life forces. In the time of the Catholic Inquisition, alchemists were careful to veil their art. They said it was to turn base metals into gold. In philosophical and metaphysical terms, the alchemists were more concerned with the transformation of the worldly person, lead, into a spiritually illuminated person, gold. Just as gold was tried and tested in the fire, so the human spirit was tried in the crucible of life, and the agent for this illumination was perceived to be the Holy Spirit. So Achamoth, which in the Gnostic terms is considered pretty negative for falling into the physical reality and having something to do with, the fact that we're somewhat enslaved, but when you actually know the story, it's the feminine energy that is getting us out of it, through the Venus transits, which the Mayans understood, through this underworld journey, because without that, these mind parasites, this dark force, is running rampant. So we're in a very transitional period. This is not going to continue for that much longer. It's a pocket of time within an infinite experience. And it's basically, like I said, I mean, we can just see ourselves sort of in rehab until we get ourselves back on track, which allows the goddess to go back home and not have to really work on this so much, which is our planetary body. It allows the veils to be lifted and gives us our multidimensional freedom back. But right now we're in a critical time to where we need to understand what's actually going on. And actually, Akmoth is a code name for a power contained in the organic light of Sophia, Ein Sof Or. So, Heros Gamos, the Shekinah or Holy Spirit, the mother principle, acts as the mediator of alchemizing the forces of polarity to dissolve into perfect harmony. This act of alchemy is the resurrection of the transformed bodies of which the wings and crown are restored to the unity couple. The union of the male principle into living compassion is married to the female principle of living wisdom, which then integrates into one functioning entity and intelligence field. So it's really important that we understand that and what this energy represents in physical matter. So the Sophia energy, when she fell into the physical and became the planetary body, is personified as the planetary body Venus. So Venus and Mercury are very close to the Earth. Venus's presence next to the Earth and the functioning of Mercury is for us to identify wisdom, the heart and the mind working together. That's close to the Earth. And it works with the Earth energy, particularly Venus, because it goes into the underworld womb and restores and purifies and goes through the 7 layers, the 7 gates of hell, where the gatekeepers are, with their technologies and their control forces. This is also about going into Hades and overcoming those darker elements. She transforms all of this with the light of her spirit, creating the upright pentagram, which overcomes having her womb used by the masculine creative force. Venus transits on Earth, which the Mayan calendar understood. The heart of the mother is needed to bring souls home, not false authority or temptation into separation. Those can be powerful catalysts, though. And yes, we can call that the dark teacher, where all these different dark forces can be great teachers for us. We're not here to just create this, like, it's all them, they're the enemy. We can look at that, and we can see where it affects us in our lives and rise above it and say, hey, that's not the right way to go. You know, it's like a kid putting their hand on the fire. Okay, I won't do that again. But the problem is, it's so glorified and rewarded in our society that we put our hand on the fire and we're like, oh, okay, actually, you know, now I have no nerve endings and we become desensitized. And that's the problem is how much this negative behavior is encouraged in our society, and that people who are conscious, who are light workers, who are trying to inform the masses are called crazy. And because we're all so just sort of sensitive and we have our insecurities, we are so wanting to be accepted that sometimes we're ruled by those things. We're like, oh, I can't tell them, or I can't step up in my power. Forget all that. It's like we're dealing with big stuff here, and human opinion is the last thing we should be concerned about. So, Earth is indeed a living entity, upon whose back and within whose heart you all presently reside. And yes, in polarity mechanics, Earth is female, with an organically female magnetic D13 monadic core. That's from Ashian Dianculontic science. So that wasn't the case when it was Tiamat, when we were dealing with the Lumerians and the Atlanteans. We were dealing more with the attempt for co-creation. But when the masculine energy, which it did, when the Luciferian energy split off, happened, the female, who had no choice, really, being this womb, very vulnerable, came into the Earth. That's why we have the Earth womb now, and she became the planet. And here, Ashiana, who has incredible information, it's really spot on, and folks like John Lash have absolutely validated that Sophia, yes, morphed into the physical planet. There is no other planet in the cosmos like it. There's other planetary bodies that are considered archons. There are other forces out there that are archetypal to a certain degree, but this Earth, the reason it has so much attention from extraterrestrials and it's just got so much going on is because the potential of us getting in touch with this 13D core and what it does to our energetics and what it does to our experience is like nothing that's ever been seen in the cosmos. And because we've overcome the hijacking of the Ascension timeline and we've regained it, but on our own terms, we're heading for something that nobody's ever seen. There's no way to gauge it. There's no time travel technology or quantum access technology that can even successfully see anything after 2012, except for chronovision, which is a little bit different because it's based on the person that's looking, different than looking glass technologies, which were what were involved in my Mars recruitment. I was recruited to Mars in 2006, and people probably know that story. I'm not really sharing much of it now, but they said they couldn't see anything past 2012. But that was the critical point where they needed to pull off their agenda. And because I understand all this stuff, I just didn't have the ability to articulate it. I was like, absolutely not. Are you kidding me? Do you know what's happening in 2012? It's like, you all are getting evicted, and we're going to take this planet back. So... would happen and like somehow that it would look something like this. But what's beautiful about what's happening is the orbit and journey of Venus draws a perfect pentagram in the sky. Cosmically speaking, this alchemy is happening. So it's one thing to know, yes, we've got this divine planet that is God manifest, God goddess. More female in the sense that it's androgynous, but it's female because it's got a womb and it births. So on that level. But to hit it home even more, astronomers and astrologists have watched the orbit of Venus and it draws a perfect star in the sky if you follow it, and it's a pentagram. So when you look at the Illuminati and you look at the dark rituals with the inverted pentagram that want us to be stuck and trapped in matter and use rituals to do that, and we see what's happening on a cosmic level, and we see what this planetary body is made of, and what we're all made of, and that we're upgrading our DNA and we're remembering who we are, we've got everything happening outside of us that's in this process. It's just a matter of aligning to it and not getting distracted by the news, not getting so lost in the artificial matrix that we miss what's really going on, the real news, which is our transformation, which is our alchemy into ascension. So just a quick thing, okay, the turning of the pentagram upright again, which is happening cosmically, and even if one is being fooled, the deeper orientation is what counts, service to self, service to others. If you can't wake up your family and friends, instead of battling them about who's crazy or not, just remember to hold a high energy. It's not worth it. Plant seeds, send links, but get out of the battle, because we have to remember that the one thing that they hate the most is unity. And it's not worth any amount of truth to wake somebody up to create battles and war. Maybe just a little bit, and then walk away like, oh, I love you. And but we don't need to create a battle out of it, because they're going to be okay. You know, even if they don't get all that. The thing is, we have to raise our frequency in the higher dimensions. Chemtrails and all the toxins of Fukushima don't affect us the same way. We transmute it, it's very alchemical. When we're in the lower density of heavy emotions and anger and fear, yes, our bodies eat up those toxins and we get cancer. This planetary body is almost dying of cancer. So we are required to step away from the game, raise our frequency, unite, because that's the global immune system, and that's what releases us. And the planetary body is counting on us. She sacrificed herself into this planetary body for us because she knows we can do it. And she's our feminine energy. So the inverted pentagram represents the Lucifer agenda, ego, and anybody who loves Lucifer that thinks I'm being a jerk, you know, it's not about blame. This is an archetypal force that we all carry. It's redeemable. It's just the Venus energy. It's just about the fact that that's the fallen version. The redemption is getting into unity again, and then we reintegrate the Lucifer energy, and we turn that demonic energy into the magical child again. So let's look at it more as energy instead of like, this deity did that, and we love this one. This is us. We are the blueprint of everything that came before us. Except we have to understand the different imprints that are covering up the divine blueprint. So service to self, ego, dark ritual manipulation, false matrix, transhumanism, controlled by matter, survival addiction, victimhood, dark agendas like chemtrails, false flags, genocide. I could go on and on and on about everything on the left-hand side of everything that's going on, all the insults, all the abuses. But here's the other side of the coin. Venus transit, soul work, alchemy turning star upright again, service to others, redeems Lucifer and raises it up again, wholeness. We do this in our own being when we are doing soul alchemy. Spirit is more powerful than matter. And the thing is, when we really recognize that, we see that reality is fluid. We can shape reality. But when we're on that side of it, we are controlled by reality. We're controlled by disease, money. We're controlled by everything that happens around us. We are just the product of it. We're in reaction to it. When we're on this side, we're observers. And we actually can change things. We can change our experience. We have access to miracle energy. That's the beauty of it all. Just a little bit about the dark agendas. We see that in the religious distortions for control. They've tried to, create governments, or they actually have created treaties with our governments. The governments are working with these lower forces. They actually originate with Crowley, Hitler, and Churchill. People who want to find out more about that, I would look up at least Renee's work, because we only hear about maybe Eisenhower or others signing treaties. We don't understand that these things have been at play far deeper and longer, and that the Draco control in the government is pretty old, and anybody who becomes president now is basically in a CIA project. It's not anything what it used to be. And that pretty much ended in the Eisenhower administration. That's also the administration where the Mars agenda, the Mars colonies were set up. And these extraterrestrials cannot be trusted. They broke the treaties. And the thing is, we have to forgive our ancestors and take it to the next level, because we don't know what we would have done. And we were dealing with a very off-centered planet at the time that is now in alignment with the galactic plane. So I don't think we're at the best of ourselves when we're completely out of whack. And now that we're all in alignment again, we are the next generation that can make wiser decisions and not get embroiled in the matrix that has been set up. to absolutely sabotage us. So by manipulating both the portals to the planet and the personal portals in our own DNA, the New World Order and its controllers hope to keep both of us and the planet trapped here in the third dimension indefinitely for their own purposes. This is what we're not allowing to happen. This is what the alchemy is about. The dense physical world is caught in a manufactured time loop in which time is a circle constantly repeating itself. What we need to do is break the time circle and thus the prison. The reptilians are doing everything they possibly can to prevent this. All these indebteds, include the microchip, are how. And they want to stay immortal as our masters via technology. They can't ascend in the normal way. They have chosen not to. They could if they wanted to. They've chosen not to, so this is the game they're trying to play. They're parasites. And so we're in a stellar activation cycle right now between 2012 and 2017. And basically, the particles of Earth that are unable to fully shift into the faster pulsation rate, those that cannot reach an accretion level of 3.5, will create a phantom Earth that will turn to the D3 time cycle. Basically, the trapped energy that I talked about. The phantom Earth will no longer remain attached to the morphogenetic field of Earth and Terra. Our frequency has to be high enough to make this shift. We are in the window period right now. We have till 2017 to really figure this out. And this is the thing. We hear about the ETs and the treaties. Check out Valiant Thor. There's going to be a short movie coming out about him called Stranger in the Pentagon. Eisenhower and Nixon put him up in the Pentagon for 3 years in VIP status, fought for his cause to help humanity get back on its feet and not be controlled by the dark forces. This is a real story. We have an archive with an interview with Craig Campobasso, who produced it, telling us all about the Venetians, the beings from Venus, not Venice. And basically, they're still here on Earth. The shadow government shut it down, but Eisenhower and Nixon did fight for their cause. They got shut down. This is where the shadow government's more powerful than the president, but they're hanging out still on Earth in motherships, and they're assisting us in keeping the frequency high. So check out that movie when it comes out. It's really important. So we are made up of all the archetypes, dimensions, and aspects of creation. We have to return to the mother-father where the balance of life is held. Right and left brain, sacred union, birthing the magical child, and the disunion is the Lucifer energy and the egoic behavior, the unhealthy ego. Not ego you can't get rid of, but it has to be aligned with the higher self for it not to create this level of duality and the dueling brother theme that we see, either rebellion and temptation or false patriarchy and control. The dragon of justice is one again is what we need to achieve. The lower octave, like I said before, is misuse of sexual energy and false laws of the patriarch. The four elements of the fifth element of spirit, called the ray of creation, is what comes in when we're in balance. So the restoration of the tree of life, that brings us back to our immortality, connects us to our galactic chakras, helps us to close down the ones that get manipulated. It's about balance, union, harmony, and love. DNA activation results. We get into that zero-point energy. It's not about worship. It's not about deities. It's about being in the beingness, in the flow, just like it was in Hyperborea, but even something different than we've ever seen. Like I said, we've created a timeline that we don't even know the result of or the outcome of, but it is mind-blowing. And I had dreams about it when I was a kid. And basically what we return to is the ability to come and go from the physical world by choice, rather get stuck in this game, but it's to teach us. It's the rehabilitation game. But in that rehabilitation, we have dark individuals that want to, like I said, take advantage. We are the tree of life, becoming conscious of our energy and our inner divine blueprint, which brings the light into the atoms of the physical. This is where it's at right now. We're in a stellar activation cycle. So let's all support one another and be in this unity, raise our frequency, and handle all the darkness as a powerful catalyst to help remind us of who we are, and that it's just symptoms of our amnesia. But the minute we remember, we are in our power. And that's what today represents. This whole weekend, this whole Free Your Mind conference, is to free ourselves from where we have absolutely been taken advantage of, and it's time to reclaim our power. So thank you so much for being here and for listening.